Hey there investors, welcome to another video. In this video we'll be looking at AMD. The reason we'll be looking at AMD is because of unusual option activity. And we look at unusual option activity because we want to follow the smart money. And the smart money is made up of large, sophisticated institutional investors with buying power in the millions. These are investors who are either buying large volumes of calls, thinking that the price of a stock will go up, or large volumes of puts, thinking that the price of a stock will go down. This is what we define as unusual option activity. And the great thing about options is that they give us a time frame, which is the expiration of the option contracts, and they also give us a strike price, which is where they think the stock price is going to move. As investors, we can try to take advantage of all of that information by following their trades or take a more conservative position to try to make a return on our investment. So remember, these videos are for entertainment purposes only. Please check out the disclaimer in the description below, as well as other information that will be covered in this video. So with that being said, let's take a look at AMD. And we can see that lately, a lot of the semiconductor stocks have been having good momentum because a lot of positive news in 5G and a lot of tech innovation, etc. So we can see that AMD, as well as some of the other semiconductor stocks, have been benefiting from that. So let's take a look at what unusual option activity is telling us about what the investor sentiment is, and with that get a feel for what they think is going to happen with the stock. So when we look at the most active stock options list on bar chart, we can see that AMD has climbed up the ranks here, which is really good positive news, and we see that similarly the call volume is positive news, meaning that the momentum is with the bulls in this case. So investors are bullish on AMD, thinking that AMD could potentially go up in the near term. So when we look at this volume, we want to try to understand what is exactly driving this bullish sentiment around AMD. And to do that, we look at some of the news that's going on. And so looking at some of the news, we see that there's a lot of new chips and items that will be coming out from most of the semiconductors, as well as presentation or event that will be hosted at CES in well, typically is hosted in Las Vegas, but this time I think will be hosted virtually. So when we look at what is going on with CES, it's a big tech event where a lot of big technologies and new technologies are unveiled and presented to people interested in the space. So you can see there that the company is planning on unveiling a few things around the future of research, education, work, entertainment, and gaming, including a portfolio of high-performing computing and graphics solutions, which is pretty much AMD's bread and butter. So a few things to note here is that they're expecting high-performance launches, one of which includes their AMD Ryzen 5000 mobility lineup. So it could be that investors are bullish on AMD because of some of the announcements that will be made at CES. So that is a good sign as far as determining what is going on with the company and could drive the momentum to the upside. But again, with a lot of the volatility that we're seeing in the market, the sentiment could turn bearish or bullish depending on some of the news, especially with a lot of the political news and transitions for political parties that will be happening in the coming days or weeks. So with that being said, let's take a look at what positions investors are taking specifically based on this news and based on the bullish news that we're getting from this event. And for that, we want to kind of take a look at a few of the recommendations that are being posted to Market Rebellion. And I brought up Market Rebellion in the past. It's a subscription service that I am subscribed to, every week they send out a trade idea where they cover a specific stock, what options to trade on the stock, and they also give out handy levels of support and resistance to follow, as well as trends and some technical analysis. So when we look at what position we want to take, we'll come back to this, but we'll see what strike price investors think the stock will reach eventually. So looking at the near term, we see that the call options with an expiration of January 15th have really high volume around the 50s, but also have a lot of open interest as well in the $100 strike price. So investors think that the stock could climb to $100 in the near term, which is within this week. And we could see that happening, as I think I forgot to mention that the event will be taking place sometime, I believe, on the 13th, or pretty soon, in a few days, if I remember reading it. So I think that's the only January note that they make. But I remember seeing in another article that the event will be taking place sometime this week. So we could see that happening with a lot of that option action here. On the put side, we see that the put is very low. So you can see that these are actually not generating any returns. So they're not doing so good on the put side, and a lot of the momentum is with the call side. But again, the sentiment could turn things around depending on some of the news that comes out this week or next. So with that being said, now that we have a feel for what position investors are taking, which it seems that investors are going for somewhere around this $100 strike price, with the stock closing around 97.25, so which is kind of a little bit lower from its highs of today. So you can see that the stock tried to break past the 100, and potentially with the news that will be coming out from the event could reach that level. We want to take a look at what position we would like to take as investors and why. And to do that, we want to take a look at the technical analysis to obtain the foundation of our basis for which we will decide to take a position on. So you can see here that stock is right around its 20-day moving average, trading right above it, which is good momentum. You can see that the levels of support on the upside are above on the 99 and then 100 ranges. So let's take a look at the trade idea that Market Rebelling is saying and what they're recommending. And I've put together this trade idea in a more summarized manner within a Google Doc. So when we look at the Google Doc, we can see that the trade idea that they're recommending would be either buying the call options here or buying the put options, depending on the market sentiment. So put options, bearish market, and call options we would get in the bullish market. So our indicators here and our entry point would be with the stock trading right above the 97.25 flat line, which I believe falls close to that or above that simple moving average, which is a good indicator that the momentum is in our favor. And then our levels of resistance or levels of profit taking targets would be as follows. So if the stock climbs to 99 and 100 and so on, we could consider closing the position or rolling our contracts to the next available expiration if the sentiment continues, or if we think that the stock could continue to climb. And likewise on the put side, if the news comes out or if something happens and the market turns bearish, then we would want to flip the switch with the stock below 97.25. So we enter the put contracts right around that entry point, and then our levels of support that we want to watch out for and take profits on would be as follows. So that is it for the trade idea related to AMD. I also wanted to provide you guys some ideas that I thought were pretty interesting that I came across just glancing at some of the uh, most actively traded options, and we can take a look at some of those really quickly. One of them, and the first one here, is Tiva Pharmaceutical. A lot of bullish sentiment around Tiva, and I think what is driving this sentiment is because of some news that's potentially coming up in the short term, with the company holding a healthcare conference on January 13th. So it could be that investors are expecting some positive news about the company during this time frame. When we look at the unusual option activity chain, we see that sentiment or expectation lies roughly around the expiration. So events coming up on January 13th, a lot of volume on January 15th expiration contracts, most of it in the 12 strike price range. But we also see that in the other website for bar chart, where we see the option chain volume. So really good indication. Apologies there for the slow loading speeds. You can see there that investors are really aiming for that $12 strike price. Stocks trading or closed right around 1138 today. So good momentum there. Wanted to bring that one up. Next up is Dropbox. And actually, before moving on to Dropbox, I do want to point out that when it comes to maybe figuring out what levels of support or resistance we want to target for, we want to take a look at some of the levels that are happening here. So this is a really great website that lists out a few of the levels of support and resistance for stocks. So if you'd like to take a position on any of these other ideas that I'll be going through, you could simply just type in the ticker symbol for the stock and then scroll down to the area where you see the support and resistance levels. For example, AMD, the stock is trading right around at its resistance. The strength of that resistance level is pretty low, with only level 1 or strength of 1, whereas the support below that level is a lot stronger at 9. So you can see there that if the momentum is strong, it could break that resistance. And then as far as watching out which levels we go at next, you can see here that the website also recommends a few positions if you're going long on the stock or if you're going short on the stock. And one of those positions is reaching for a target of 103 and then so on, another target of 106. So this is a really good website, and I'll be posting the link for each of these additional ideas in the description below, so check them out, as well as some of the links on here as well. And then that website, I think, will help you guys figure out what levels you want to watch out for, which ones you want to take profits on or close your contracts on. So for example, if you entered in TEVA and were wondering, when do I want to start closing out my contracts if I get in the 10 strike calls or the 12 strike, simply use the website here to figure out some of the levels of support and resistance, and that could help guide you. And if you want just recommendations on trades, this is a pretty summarized way of figuring out what the next target levels are for the stock on the upside as well as on the downside. So that is a really good website. Highly recommend it as well. And with that, let's move on to the next idea, which is Dropbox. Dropbox, I've noticed, also had pretty good open interest and a lot of bullish sentiment around the stock. You can see down here, most of the volume is coming and open interest is coming from call options. So looking into what's going on with Dropbox, you can see that some of the news which has been coming up recently is that the company is being eyed as a target for M&A activity, which stands for merger and acquisitions. So the stock could be potentially being eyed for purchasing by another company. So shares have been rising on that news, as it seems that the stock will likely end up being purchased. So this is pretty interesting news, and typically when a company purchases another company, if both companies are public, the company that is being acquired, that company's stock usually goes up versus the company that is doing the purchasing, their stock usually goes down. And this is typically done for a couple reasons, one of them being that the company which is getting acquired sees an increase in value as it is being brought on to the other company, which is purchasing its assets and liabilities. So in doing so, values the company a lot more, and therefore the value of that stock is reflected in that purchase. Versus the company that is doing the purchasing, their value goes down typically because the value of the other company is getting priced in with the stock rising at the other company, and therefore the value of this purchasing company goes down. And that's sort of just of it. There are many other reasons, but typically you usually see that pattern when the company is being acquired. The company that is being acquired, their stock goes up, and the company that is doing the purchasing, their stock goes down. So something to be on the lookout for. Another quick idea, Target and Walmart. So these will kind of be looped in together, but Target and Walmart, most of what's driving the bullish sentiment around Target and Walmart seems to be because of some of the retail numbers that have been coming up lately, and a lot of it has to do with trends in gaming. A lot of people buying the new game consoles like the PS5, and a lot of these stores are getting out of stock from these products. So it seems that investors are really bullish on the numbers that they'll be able to hit when it comes to reporting their retail numbers. So there's a lot of option activity going on for these particular plays here, both Target and Walmart, and having a few loading issues, but you can see that when we take a look at the option volume, Target and Walmart are expected to benefit essentially from a lot of this online gaming and stay-at-home entertainment trend that we've been seeing because of the coronavirus and because of some of the more recent lockdowns. So these are companies that could benefit highly from some of these stay-at-home orders, and that is really good news for both of the companies because they will likely have an increase in the value that is reflected in that expectation of increased sales from those retail numbers. So when we look at Walmart, for example, the stock's currently trading at 147.29, but investors are really eyeing the strike price of 150. So investors could potentially see the stock going to levels around 150, which is really bullish sentiment. When we look at Target, similar momentum. We see investors really bullish. Currently the stock's at 195, just blew past some of these contracts, but you can see here in the open interest, investors are still holding strong, which with very little volume being traded here. So investors are really bullish on Target and Walmart at the same time. So I thought these were great ideas. If you guys wanted to check them out, I'll be posting the link to some of these details in the description below. But these are some of the extra ideas I wanted to share with you all, aside from the AMD one. And I'll be posting the links to all of these tabs in the description below. Thank you guys again for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.